everybody. My name is Sue.
Hi, and I'm Alex. Nice to meet you.
Lovely to have you on board with us for our fifth podcast, Alex. So, we have covered some really interesting topics to date. And today we're going to take a slightly different tangent, but there's still quite a bit of research around this. We're going to focus a little bit on creativity and curiosity today. So, why the interest for you around creativity?
I think it's the interplay between the two concepts, really. The interplay between creativity and curiosity. But when we're talking specifically about creativity, it is the lack of opportunity people give themselves when they misunderstand what we're talking about.
Mm.
So, when we're not talking about becoming Rembrandt. Um, and people are being creative all the time without really necessarily interpreting it into that word. So that's what really excites me is how do we help people connect with this concept of creativity?
Okay, so let's pick up on that because you're absolutely right. I used to think I wasn't creative because I was terrible at painting. In fact, I've even got a canvas up on my wall that's
Mhm.
hiding that nobody can see. That was my attempt with some paints to do something, and it basically looks
Yeah.
like a blob of red, a blob of orange, and a blob of blue, and that's about it.
Yeah.
So I used to equate creativity to painting and artistry. You've mentioned Rembrandt,
Mm.
but actually, creativity, I've realized I am creative, but in very different ways. So can you expand that definition for us?
Absolutely. So it's anywhere where you're kind of really. Um, so I'll give some practical examples. Would
Hmm.
be uh, in the sporting world when the crowds are chanting. They'll often, you'll have a group of people who wouldn't describe themselves as creative, but they come up with some amazing novel ways of sharing their support for a team. I don't want to repeat any of one of them because often they're full of swear words, but they're coming up with a song, a piece of poetry, in fact, really, which says, here we are, we're creating, and it comes from nothing. Gardeners, I think you could argue, are creative often. Walk down the major streets of any city in the world, and you'll see people creatively expressing themselves through what they wear,
Yeah.
how they present themselves in the world. In terms of my own journey, um, my work in life really in terms of presenting and sharing information with people is done through storytelling, and storytelling is a form of creativity. So you can find it in all sorts of different spaces. It's recognizing that you're being creative, I think, is key.
Okay, so let's have a look at this first from a science perspective, and then we'll sort of move to
Mm.
the practical perspective. So, when you think of creativity, from what does the science and research tell us? What can you share with us?
I think the first thing to share is that the science is really rigorous
Mm.
around this now. So it's an emerging field, but what we have is really solid, and it shows that more people who are more creative and more consciously creative actually report higher levels of well-being.
Mm.
So, it's all about your perceived well-being, really. I mean, you can't necessarily judge that in any other way, but people do report feeling better, feeling more engaged in life, more excited by life. But again, critical to that is going back to your story, Sue, is it's not forced creativity. It's
Mm.
not doing something that you don't enjoy, you don't feel engaged with. And I keep mentioning the word engaged, and what we also see with creativity is often the emergence of flow, and flow being that moment where you're completely lost in something. People again misunderstand flow. There needs to be effort. It's not that it's really easy. There's a challenge for it to be flow. I think about once when I was riding a motorcycle in the northeast of England, and it felt like time had stood still, and I was flowing through the country roads, and I had to concentrate so hard on what I was doing that I got lost in that moment. That's flow.
So let's pick up on that because I agree with you. People often do misinterpret flow. And when you think about the science, there's eight components of flow,
Mm,
and all this sort of stuff. And the one that most people remember is the time disappears or the
mm,
time morphs, etc. But I think what's important that you said, and I don't want to skip over it because it is actually important, is flow only tends to occur when you have to put in effort, when you have to concentrate, when it's potentially challenging, but you're getting feedback as you do it. So talk to us more about that. If I want to encourage more flow in my life, how can I use the science to help me?
Yeah, and again, thank you for picking up on it too, because it's utterly critical. It's not the stuff where you feel relaxed and it's
Mm.
easy. It's where you're stretching yourself. I suppose we could associate it with learning. It's where you're starting to grow and push yourself to the limit, where you're really focused so heavily on what you're doing, and that's what causes the time difference for you, is because you're focused tremendously on what's going on for you. So I've seen people achieve flow when they've been knitting. And they're concentrating so much on getting this right that they do it. I've even, believe it or not, I find this hard to say, but I've seen people do it in terms of spreadsheets. People connecting to, I know it wouldn't be my idea, but yeah, that's what floats your boat. So, anywhere where you have to concentrate and work in the moment, you can find moments of flow, I believe.
Yeah, and again, I want to pick up on that for our listeners because I think this is really important. Is sometimes when we do a hobby or a thing, we get to a certain point where we feel relaxed, and the chances are, if we're relaxed, we're actually not going to be in flow.
Yeah.
And the example I often give, and I haven't played for a while, but I am not naturally musical. But in my 20s, I had a friend who played the piano and she started to teach me. And I did my grade one, I did my grade two, and then I kind of was doing grade three before I sort of moved to Australia. But what's really interesting is my only experience of flow playing the piano was when I was playing the entertainer, which is actually not that difficult. For those who've
Mhm.
heard of it, the entertainer is actually not that hard if you're a concert pianist. But for me, it required a lot of concentration. If you ask me to play Jingle Bells, I'm not going to get in flow because it's too easy. But equally, if you ask me to do some sort of, Swan Lake aria or something, I'm not going. There's no
Yeah.
arias in Swan Lake. But, it was
Yeah.
something really complex. I can't do it. So if I find myself with something, whether it's work or personal hobbies, etc., with that is starting to become easy, what should I do to try and perhaps stretch myself more?
Again, I really commend you on kind of making that link, Sue, because uh, sometimes when you describe this to people, they think they've got to go off and find something new.
Mm,
But it often is about taking what you're doing to the next level.
mm,
So an example from my life is I find it really easy to do in-person presentations. So you can stand me in front of any group of people you want, and I'm happy to kind of just talk and tell stories and share information. However, doing it online, I have to consciously think
mm,
about that. So I may be sharing the same information, I may be presenting in the same way, certainly be wearing the same stuff, but I have to consciously think about sharing the message in a way that works online. So it's taking what you're already doing now and saying, what if I did it in a slightly different way? What
mm.
if I did it in a different format, in a different forum, a different space, whatever it would be, but challenging yourself to do it slightly differently. So I don't know if you knit, but perhaps you've always knitted scarves. Let's try knitting a cardigan.
Yes.
Yeah, just do slightly different. It doesn't have to be a dramatic difference.
Yeah, and I think that's the important thing is we don't want to go so far away that we become anxious, but
Yes.
stretching ourselves a little bit more with either more people or fewer people or in a different setting or a different level or something would be useful.
Yeah, my wife, she loves doing puzzles, so she likes doing crossword and Sudoku and things
Ah,
like that.
okay.
But every now and again, she'll find a different one she's never done before.
Yeah.
And you see her getting so absorbed in that.
Yeah.
The ones that she normally does, it's like, yeah, there's another one, done another one, another one. But then when she has to think about it and concentrate on it and work out how to do it, there's that different level of engagement.
I love it. And at the moment, I have a jigsaw puzzle on the go
Yeah.
that's got 500 pieces of black.
Wow. Black.
And
Wow.
I think it's too far. I'm not going to experience flow. I think it might be going back in the box.
Wow. Brilliant.
But I want to come back to a couple of things there because when we think about flow, is there any downside to flow that you've sort of read about or heard about?
No, basically, I'm sure there is in science, but I wouldn't know it, so I would bow to yourself there. So,
Well, the only thing I'm thinking of, Alex, as we talk is there are a lot of games, online games,
right.
game apps, and things like that that are designed to keep you in flow because they increase the challenge when you're
Right.
good at it. And I'm wondering if then, somebody stays up till 3 o'clock in the morning playing on
Yeah.
games, that could be in flow because of the concentration, the focus, the challenge, but it might well distract people from relationships or real life. That was the only thing I was thinking.
I think that makes a lot of sense in terms of your challenge to that kind of work, and I would argue that with pretty much anything.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah.
I forget the name of the researcher now, but I read a lot about harmonious passion
Ah,
versus obsessive passion, and anything can be taken to an extreme level
yeah.
where it potentially becomes damaging to the human being.
Yeah, that's a great example. Now, coming back, there was something you said earlier that I think if we come back to creativity, because I agree we can often experience flow when we're in those creative moments, but you talked about forced creativity. Just talk to us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so I remember when I was very young at school being forced to draw, forced to create artwork, and all I could help but think was, I can't do this.
Yeah.
It's hard work. I don't enjoy it. I fail all the time. At least that was the language in my head. I have to say the teachers were very encouraging and saying, you're doing a great job, but I was convinced that I wasn't. And I think what they did was to kind of limit the options.
Mm.
Uh, you know, had they said, well, let's do a piece of collage, um, does the picture that you're trying to create, does it have to make sense to another human being, or can it make sense to you? So I think we can broaden our perception of things out, which then opens up the doors for more people to engage in the process.
Yeah. And I want to expand that sense of creativity because you're right. It was only sort of when I got into adulthood I realized that actually I was creative in the when I'm facilitating, I'll come up with creative ways of bringing the neuroscience to life with an
Yeah.
activity, which is very different to actually producing anything creative. How does creativity and curiosity play together?
So I think they actually feed off one another. The way I would describe it is, if you're getting into a car, for example, you can get into the car from either side. You can get into the car from the driver's side or the passenger side. Uh, Creativity and curiosity lead you into the car. One is one side of the car and one is the other. And they're different routes into there. But being curious can lead you to pathways to creativity. And being creative can lead you to pathways to curiosity. So I would argue that they're really a very symbiotic process that work together to heighten your well-being.
I love that. And one of the things that I love is curiosity is an emotion, as in I can
Yeah.
feel curious. So one of the things that I often challenge people with when I'm running programs is, can you find 5 minutes in a day or 10 minutes of a day where you're just going to be curious and see what happens?
Yeah.
So I want to ask you, how do you bring curiosity to life in your day-to-day life?
It's a probably for most people would be a boring thing, to be honest with you, Sue. But I love to read research papers. I'm just fascinated by them.
How
Excellent.
do we?
So this is where the curiosity stroke creativity link comes in. I remember it'll be about 12 or 13 years ago now. I was working with somebody who was a pure academic and researcher, and they watched me present, and they said something that was unique was my ability to read a research paper one day and then translate it into practice for people the very next day. And I think that's where it kind of feeds in for me, and I get passionate about taking that research paper and creating it in a way that will make sense to other people. So both are feeding off each other all the time.
I love that. I knew we had lots in common. Brilliant. Okay, so let's think about this for all of us in everyday life. If we want to take this science of creativity, curiosity, and we want to leverage it more, what are some little practical things that I can do?
So I'm going to link it to a few different concepts. Um, My mother, she used to live in a city called Glasgow in Scotland, and she moved to Newcastle upon Tyne, where she married my father and settled down. And she used to tell me the story all the time about how, as she wandered around the streets of this new city, she had to take notice of the names of the streets. And she became very conscious of what different streets were called. But the local people didn't know. The local people would say, if you go via such and such a shop, you'll get eventually to wherever you're going to, whereas she could actually name the streets. I would argue that that's curiosity at play here, that she was curious about the environment she was in. And I think we can consciously set out every single day to explore something new about the space we're operating in. I would also suggest to people, and this might sound a bit strange, but a really good practice is when you wake up in the morning, think of a what if question. What if I did this differently today? What if I had this different experience? What if it, and it, again, we're talking about really small stuff here. What if I had tea rather than coffee? What would that actually mean for me? What if I did my morning routine slightly different to the way it was before? And then observe what happens. Another concept I would link this to, and one that's really prevalent in the positive psychology field, is the concept of journaling. And people recommend journaling all the time. You'll hear it a lot when people talk about gratitude. They'll say at the end of every day, write down something that you're grateful for. Well, what about you actually drew a picture of what that was? What about if you gave it a feeling or a color? And then after a month, you looked back through each of those to be curious about patterns that emerged for you and why those emerged.
I like that. And it's interesting you say that, Alex, because we talked about positive emotions and curiosity in our previous session. And one of the things that I do when I write down things I'm grateful for, I often get curious and I have a particular theme.
Yeah.
So tonight it's going to be about me, as in I'm grateful for every healthy cell in my body, or tomorrow it's about the world in general. So I think that getting curious about little things is important. And I wonder if we think about that, is it about noticing as well, like noticing the things around you?
All the time, I think, and being consciously aware of it. So there is a link with concepts like mindfulness and curiosity in particular. So, paying attention in the moment to what's taking place. If we both shared that with each other at the beginning here that we've been walking on the beach this past weekend. Well, you can kind of just walk on the beach, or you can walk on the beach and you can look at the sand, you can look at what this ocean's bringing in. I was very blessed to see some eagles flying as we walked this weekend. So you can pay attention, or you can just mindlessly move.
That's really important. Let me come to that because I think, to your point, I remember somebody saying to me when I said I walk on the beach every morning, somebody said, "Oh, doesn't that get boring? It's the same." And I went, "It's never the same beach."
Yes,
So to your
yes.
point, that's that noticing, that curious, that seeing what's different today. How do we translate that to creativity?
So again, it's what you do with that. So how do you capture that for yourself? Can you do that in a slightly different way? Can you play a game with it? If you're walking with somebody, can you talk about what you're noticing and play games with that? I saw an eagle. What did you see?
Yeah.
Um, and now also that why do certain things connect with you? So you notice a particular shell on the beach. I notice, I don't know, a dolphin in the ocean. Why did that connect for you? And explore that with one another about what that actually means.
Yeah, and I like that because it links to what we spoke about meaning and what you said earlier, that sometimes when we're creative, it doesn't have to mean anything to anybody else. It
Yeah.
has to mean something to us. So let's imagine, actually, I don't have to imagine, but let's imagine there are other people listening like me who don't necessarily think they're creative. How do we also tackle that mindset? When someone says get more creative, I'm like, I'm not creative. How do we deal with that? How do I deal with that, Alex?
Uh,
Help me.
so, so the first thing I would say is absolutely everybody's creative, even if you don't believe you are. Uh, Sometimes the word is getting in the way
Mhm.
for people. So it's simply about a way of expressing who you are. So as I sit and look at you right now, there's creativity in your hair, in the way you've presented your hair, what you chose to wear today. It's difficult to see for your hair, but it looks like you've got a necklace with a pendant on. There's creativity in having chosen to wear that. And then we can go bigger picture and say, well, there's creativity in the combination of those things. So when you're thinking about tomorrow, could you think about a different combination of things? And how could you do that differently? What would it express? What mood would it express? What would it say about you? So it's not necessarily about going off and learning to do something completely new. It's about finding ways of expressing your creativity differently through what you already do. I'm concentrating on what you wear because I do it with my shirts all the time.
Yeah.
Yes, I consciously pick shirts for different occasions.
So let me pick up on this, Alex, because I think this is really interesting as you said that. So if I think about, I've never thought about it creativity wise because I only ever wear black when I work. That's
Right.
the rule that I have. It's part of my image, if you like. I have a bit of a rock chicky image, I suppose. I only ever wear black, but it's actually practical when I pack and I don't pack.
Mm,
The pendant that I'm wearing is because one of our diploma students gave it to me just
mm,
before IPA,
mm,
and I am wearing that out of respect for her.
mm.
And also because my other necklace I've been wearing since I was 18 is broken. And this has
Yeah.
replaced it. But I think what's interesting is what you've just said is not something I would have thought of as creativity because there's the practical and a meaning element behind it. But what you said about creativity is meaning, as in this means something to
Yes.
me, the black means something to me.
Yeah.
So I want to pull that thread just for a few more minutes is for people listening to that, how do they take something that's meaningful to them and connect it with creativity as you've just done? Give us some examples about what you do or anything like that. I'd love to know more.
Sure, yeah. And I mean, just building on your example, first off, you talked about the black being part of an image, a professional image for your business. Well, surely creating an image is creativity
Mm,
in itself. So where most of us are unconsciously making those choices,
mm,
making decisions about how we present ourselves to the world, how we engage with the world. So I don't know, perhaps you're a mum, and you want to engage with your young child in a different way, and you want to create meaning and purpose for that child. You're going to play. Yeah, in that play, you may draw together or you may build blocks together, but you don't stop being that child as you get older. You- So reach down to yourself.
mm.
Be the mum to yourself. Be the father to yourself. Play. Find little ways in which you can connect things together for yourself. For me, my meaning and my purpose has, for my whole life, really has come through my work, which is why I thought, well, how can I do this well? I'm not a great writer. I'm useless at research, but I've become a great storyteller because I've crafted it, I've worked at it, I've enjoyed playing with it. I have had those moments of flow in it. So it's picking the one that kind of connects to you and what you do on a regular basis. And if that's jigsaws, then brilliant, fantastic. Challenge yourself to do a different kind of jigsaw. What about a three-dimensional jigsaw?
Yeah. So what if we pull all these threads together, and I love it because it's weaving some of the things we've been speaking about before, is again, it's the small things. It's choosing 30 seconds, 1 minute, 5 minutes in your day to perhaps notice and be curious and find something new.
Yeah,
To your point, I'm hearing that it's also noticing where you may have been creative that you might not have thought it was creative.
yeah,
And then that third link around what matters to you, what's meaningful to you. about how you bring your story or your creativity to life. There's a sense of meaning around in that.
Yeah, I mean, when we're talking about this, I always remember the story of somebody I worked with, and she did some amazing work with a client of the service we were working for, and we were trying to help this person explore their values, and the spoken word just wouldn't work for them. So we defaulted to the written word, and that didn't still didn't work. And then my ex-colleague, she said, "Well, let's create a garden." And each plant in the garden represents something that's significant to you as a human being. And I thought that was a beautiful, creative way to engage with this person, but also this person engaged with that in an amazing way. She linked the gardening, which was something that he was already passionate about, to the values which had meaning for him. And in that, created a great space, which actually ended up getting published.
Wow. And I think what's again important there that you just said, it's actually not necessarily about what it might mean to somebody else. Because we see this all the times with paintings. You look
Yeah.
at a painting, I look at a painting, one person goes, wow, that's amazing. Another person goes, wow, it's so not.
Yeah.
So creativity is about expression and not letting anybody else judge you for your expression.
I think that's again enormously important too, and it is really about how it's perceived. When I first saw the Mona Lisa, for real, as it were, I was disappointed. It was like, really, is that it? And there's all these cues of people saying how marvelous it is, and I thought, well, I'm bitterly disappointed. Yeah. So you're never going to find everybody that's going to say, "Wow, what you did is awesome, and incredible." If it means something to you, if it expresses something of who you are, and you enjoy the process of creating that, job done.
I love it. Thank you. And what I love, Alex, is you said at the beginning that if we can bring this creativity and curiosity to life, it has been shown to improve our levels of well-being. So I guess we're challenging our listeners to find a few moments to notice, to be creative, to see something new in their everyday.
Absolutely, and try to link those two concepts together. So be creative about what you're curious about,
Mm.
and most of all, have fun doing it.
I love it. Thank you, Alex. Thank you,
Thanks, Sue.
everybody, for listening, and we will see you again next time.
Take care.